Dear colleagues, dear friends, professors, hello to everybody. I will be talking about the effects of ketamine on cognition in unipolar and bipolar depression. So this is the objectives of my presentation. First of all, starting to prepare this presentation, I would like to refer to the literature search. When you look at PubMed, ketamine, there's around 23,000. But when you have ketamine and antidepressant, 3,000. When you evaluate them all together, then you run up with 400 results. These results made me think that I have been delivering a presentation on a very important topic these days. Why? Because within the scope of unipolar and bipolar depression, there is more than 264 million people affected by it. SSRIs and other conventional antidepressants are being used these days. So we are actually letting our patients recover through these, but these methods also have their disadvantages. And despite our methods, there is around 20 to 30% that do not recover. They are resistant to therapy. So there's also such a group. So these therapies should be consistent every day. And there are also certain disadvantages about the timing of the drugs, which makes us think about requirements for new options, and ketamine is one of them. If we look at the history of ketamine, it was first discovered by Calvin Stevens in 1926 in Parle Davis laboratory. And then it was applied to the prison inmates in 1970s, and the patent application was done thereupon. Since 1970s, it is being used as a safe anesthetics. It has analgesic and amnesic effects. It has rapid effect, therefore it is being used in general anesthesia. In year 2000, together with this publication, titled Antidepressant Effects of Ketamine in Depressed Patients, so there's this increasing interest in the ketamine as well as studies. So S-ketamine is being approved in the United States, in Europe in 2019, and in Canada in 2020. How does it do it? In the first 24 hours, there's depression being treated, which is around 59 to 80% success. So that's how it receives the approval. What is ketamine? It is also known as angel dust, psychomethic pansclidine. There are two antimers, so it is a mix of these. So when I say ketamine, I will be referring to brochemical mix. It has antidepressant effects. When we look at the receptor system, the main characteristics is NMDA antagonistic. And NMDA, as you know, it's one of the most important glutamate receptors. Interpreted note, we cannot see the screen. We cannot read the screen. It does not only do an NMDA antagonism, but also serotonin system effects as well. So how does ketamine have this effect very rapidly? We do not know about the mechanism very well, but there are various receptors that it clings to and creates direct and indirect effects. So this is the hypothesis. According to the existing hypothesis, ketamine firstly block the NMDA receptors, disinhibiting neurons, presynaptic glutamate neurons secreting glutamate, and postsynaptic neurons receptors are being stimulated, and the blockage of NMDA is inhibiting the phosphorating, increasing the secretion of BDNF. Kinase B is being activated, Rapamycin and is being activated and protein synthesis is being done. Dendritic ramification is taking place. Why are these all important? Because it leads to the increase of BDNF, which is one of the most important predictions. This study was conducted in 2016. IB infusion ketamine, 20 hours later, BDNF levels increase, like in other antidepressants. In the study with the increase of BDNF, they also found that there's a default mode network of the brain's rest phase, and some activations actually are dysfunctional in many depressions, and there's extreme activation in such patients. So antidepressants have to depress these activations. So together with the increase in BDNF, after 24 hours with ketamine in the functional MRAs of resting patients, we see that this activity has been lowered. And this is another important thing about ketamine. What about the pharmacokinetics of ketamine? So it can be administered in many different ways, depending on comfort, bioefficiency for the duration of effect, IVIN, SCIM, and oral administration is possible. But oral administration seems to be the most possible, the easiest. But its taste is very bad. And there is a prelimination, hepatic prelimination. Therefore, oral administration is not recommended. So it's mostly IV and intranasal. 4 to 45 minutes, 0.5 microgram per kilograms. In obese patients, morbid obese patients, it has to do with the target weight. Intranasal form is in 56 milligrams or 84 milligrams, twice in the first 4 weeks, once a week for the second 4 weeks, or once every 2 weeks for the continuing 2 weeks. An intranasal situation, depending on the inflammation and various pathologies, might be some of the disadvantages in the intranasal administration. So these patients can have ketamine through IV administration. The metabolism is very important here. So it is stimulating, metabolizing with certain enzymes in the liver. Dihydrogenol ketamine cannot trespass the blood-brain limit. There's also this thing about hydroxynol ketamine. In the preclinical studies, it says that it has antidepressant effects and has fewer effects than ketamine itself. Therefore, maybe in the upcoming studies we can learn more about these metabolites. So it's mostly 2 to 4 hours, depending on elimination half-life, it is being disposed from the liver. In ketamine, we see that its metabolites have different effects. You see the table. The audience sees the table. S-ketamine is much stronger compared to R-ketamine. So hydroxynol ketamine, in comparison with norketamine, it has stronger blockage. So it is a stronger blockage, as I say. But tyrosine kinase B activation is lower in comparison with hydroxynol ketamine. So if it is based on the B receptor blockage, then it would create a stronger antidepressant effect. But there are not too many studies. IV ketamine is stronger than S-ketamine. So it is not only about ND-MRI's blockage, but the other receptors have an effective implication here. It is inhibiting and antagonizing opioid receptors. And about opioids, there's this study. One group is administered ketamine plus placebo. The other group is administered. There has been a comparison. So in the second group, the antidepressant effects were found out to be more. Therefore, it has a strong effect in antidepressants, similarly to other antidepressants. What I try to say here is I talked about what ketamine is about, what kind of mechanism it has, and now I will be talking about its effect on cognition. What is cognition? As you all know, it is an umbrella term. It's learning the language, using language, remembering, problem solving, etc. All these competencies are being used. In unipolar and bipolar depression, especially, in many psychiatric disorders, you have cognitive disorders as well. Why is cognitive disorder important? Because it is in direct relation with the functionality in these patients. Therefore, the amelioration and recovery of these aspects are important. So what about the effects of ketamine on cognition? When it's administered to a healthy population, in several minutes, it is disrupting the cognition. What about the depressive group? There are many studies with the depressed group, but there is no consensus. You see an article published in 2022, the latest systematic compilation analysis. So there were 5 groups. Single dose IV ketamine, continuous IV ketamine, continuous IV ketamine, subanesthetic doses, or anesthetic.
Cognition will not be affected up to 2 months. In bipolar depression group, we don't have many studies. We don't have many studies either, which is covering only bipolar patients. There are 2 studies here. One of them is an open study, and the results are quite high to interpret. Also, sample number was, the cohort was so low, but the other non-open label studies had shown that there was no change in cognitive functions. Here, repetitive dose IV ketamine and its effect on cognition has been studied. Most of them are open label studies. So, after repetitive dose IV, we like a study which can lead us to a good interpretation. These studies did not show a significant cognitive change. There was a study related to bipolar patients. There was no significant change either, but still, it was stated that it's really hard to interpret in this group. After repetitive dose of intranasal ketamine, there was one study in 2020, followed up to 44 weeks, and it was shown that cognitive functions had not been impaired. In subanesthetic dose, it's given in addition to AKT, and the result was, with ketamine, when AKT is being taken, either the cognitive functions has not changed or went down. Also, when we administer experimental dose, either cognitive functions were not impaired or impaired less in comparison with the other group. We know that EKT is impairing cognitive function when ketamine and ECT are taken together. It was shown that it can be used together. We can see everything in a single table. We don't have a definite result, but still, we mostly have yellows. Cognitive functions has not been impaired in bipolar or unipolar. So impairment is quite less. And there are some adverse effects of ketamine which patients are not using only one substance. They are using generally more than one substance. So cognitive impairment cannot be only linked to ketamine. Also, there are toxicity and other adverse effects. It's not suggested for pregnancy and lactation. It's contraindicated. In a pediatric group, we don't have study. In elderly group, the studies comparing over 65 and less 65 did not show a significant change, but high-quality studies are missing in liver patients. It's suggested to use with frequent monitorization. Finally, let me wrap up. Ketamine is an important issue. It's RDMA receptor antigen increases BBMV, and in this way allows neuroplasticity. It's the most important part of its effect mechanism. It can be rapidly effective in treatment resistant depression and suicidal thinking. It's one of the most important treatment options. Did not find it, of course, time will show this, did not find any reported negative effects on single or repeated dose IV ketamine on cognition in individuals with MDD. In this optimistic view, even it can protect when used with ECT, but the information about how it is being done were missing. Ketamine, when addressed to healthy population, it is impairing in a few minutes, but when it is administered to depressive population, it's not changing function. Why? This was an important question. I couldn't find the answer in these articles. I wrote an email to the author of the article. I hope we will find the answer. I looked whether or not this was a biased article, but I couldn't find any study. Maybe we need more studies about this. Maybe we can do these studies. These are the references of my study. Thank you for listening.